What's up, everybody? My name is Josh LaFleur with Late Start Piano. Today I'm going to be responding to a comment I had, this was a few weeks ago, where somebody had told me that they have a hard time remembering the chord inversions. And they said that they have a hard time with figuring out, first of all, just remembering the inversions. What's the first inversion? What's the second inversion? And the root position, and then also playing those inversions as well. So I'm going to be talking about how you can remember those chord inversions, as well as how you can practice them going forward, and overall how to remember those inversions a little bit better. So to know what chord inversions are and to be able to practice those and to remember those, you need to understand what root position chords are first. So root positions, you have your C major, C, E, G, and this is called a root position chord because the name of the chord, in this case C, is at the bottom, right? And the way you kind of want to think about this, and not a lot of piano teachers talk about this, but just zoom out for a second and look at the piano as kind of a big picture instrument. So we're not laser focused on, okay, C major, what are the specific notes in C major? We'll get to that in a second, but first of all, just zoom out and look at the entire keyboard as a whole. And it can seem intimidating, right? Because there's so many different keys. You have the 88 different keys on the piano for full size. But the cool thing about the piano is that we can voice these so many different ways, right? And when you talk about different voicings, there's just so many different ways that you can go about kind of playing these chords. And again, going back to the voicing. So the note that's on the bottom of the piano, that's your root. Again, that's the bottom, right? So that would be your voice 1, also known as your bass note. Then you go up, this is your voice 2, and then your voice 3. So kind of think of it as somebody maybe singing. If you had 3 people singing like in a choir, or in some kind of a cappella group, you have somebody who sings the bass, then you have somebody who sings maybe the alto or the tenor, right, somewhere in the middle, and then the higher pitched person who can sing the highest register notes, they play the soprano, they sing the notes up top. And when they all sing together, you have this beautiful chord, you have this beautiful harmony, and that's all harmony is, right? Just multiple notes being played together at the same time. So when you have that root position chord, the name of the chord, again, in this case C, is at the bottom. So that's your bass. Then you have the alto, and then you have the soprano. But we can also rearrange those voicings as well. So instead of having the bottom person, going back to our singing example, instead of having the bottom bass player sing the C, the name of the chord, we could bump the soprano person up to the top and have the higher pitched person sing the C and have the bass person sing the E instead, right? And then the alto would sing the G. So you still have your bass, you still have your alto, and you still have your soprano, but they're just singing the different notes of the chord, right? So in this version, the root position, the bass person sings the name of the C. Then we invert that chord. This would be first inversion. Now the C, which was in the bass, that was being sung by the bass person, right, down here, is now being sung by the soprano. And now the bass person is singing the E because that's now the lowest note. Then we can invert this one more time, where the bass person is now singing the G. And the alto is singing the C, and the soprano, the highest pitch, does the E. And that's second inversion, first inversion, and root position. It's all the same chord, those were all C major, but they're just voiced differently. we're taking that chord and we're just moving around to different positions. Of course, we can do this with any chord, and of course, we can do this with the left hand as well. Say we do a B major, a B flat major. In the root position, the bass would be singing the B flat. Then the alto, soprano. We can invert this to first inversion. Now the bass is singing the D, alto, soprano. And then one more time. Right, those are all still B flat major. It's just we can play them in 3 different ways. So that's just kind of a high overview of chords and just a little bit of background as far as why we talk about voicings, right? Another word for chord inversions is voicings. So you can voice it a few different ways, right? And of course, if we had 7th chords, now we have 4 notes. So we can play that 4 different ways. But for this video, we'll just be sticking to triads, just a basic 3-note chord. So that's kind of the high level overview. And of course, to kind of spread it out a little bit, just as another visual for you, for those of you who are more visual, this might be helpful. We can do C, G, and E. So now look how far we're spreading across the piano, right? Or we can do C, E, and G. So still a root position, but the voicings are much more spread, right? Versus just, these are pretty close. And of course we can invert that. We can do E, C, and G. Right? They're different voicings, still the same chord. It's just we're playing it in different ways. And we can play open chords like how I just showed you, like that, where there's a little bit more space. And the chord sounds much bigger, right? This sounds like a pretty big chord. If I try to stretch this out to the max. Still a C major, still all the same notes, C, E, G. They're just voiced differently. They might be in different spots. And it's really spread out, but it's still C major. Of course, this is still C major as well, but this is a closed position. See how close the notes are? And it sounds differently. And I'm emphasizing this because I want you to understand what a root position chord sounds like versus a first inversion versus a second inversion. It should sound differently for you. And I think part of learning the piano is having your ear developed as well, just overall being able to hear certain things. It's not that you have to play everything by ear all the time or have perfect pitch, but being able to hear things, I think, is a crucial skill that any musician should have, no matter what instrument you play, whether it's piano or if it's guitar or saxophone or trumpet or whatever. You should have some degree of ear training always in your practice sessions. Something I really like to do, and I enjoy doing it as well. It's nice to kind of get away from the sheet music at times. But back to the inversions, now that I'm getting off track. So now that we understand the voicings, we understand it at a high level overview, the next thing we need to understand is we need to understand the notes that make up a chord. So if you don't know the notes that make up a chord, then you're not going to be able to play the root position, which means you're not going to be able to play the inversions, right? And it's one reason why scales are important, because as you work on your scales, you can also play chords on all the scale degrees, so you know what notes make up which chords, right? But let's assume that you know all the notes that make up a chord, so you know what makes up an A flat major, you know what makes up a F sharp minor, right? You know what notes make up those chords. Now we can kind of talk about the inversions and the shapes. So when it comes to the inversions, we don't really want to be thinking, okay, I want to play F sharp major in second inversion. Okay, so that's going to be, you know, C sharp, and then we'd have F sharp, and then if it's a major, we'd have A sharp, right? Or D flat, G flat, and B flat, which would be a G flat major. We don't really want to be thinking about the individual notes. You might have to do that at first if you're not really comfortable with your chords in general and you're not comfortable with your scales. You might have to kind of think about, you know, what makes up B flat minor. You might have to actually think consciously about those notes. But once you kind of get those basic chords down, you understand your scales and your notes, Now you can get away from thinking about the individual notes and start thinking about the shape. Okay, so this is kind of the crux of the whole video, is for inversions, to help you remember them. You don't always want to be thinking about the individual notes. You want to get to a point where you move past that and you can focus more on the shape of your hand. So when you play a C major in root position in your right hand, you use your thumb, your middle finger, and your pinky. When you play a first inversion in your right hand, you use your thumb, your pointer finger, and then your pinky. Then your second inversion, you use your thumb, middle finger, and your pinky. Right? So you're either using these three fingers, these three, or these three. So every single second inversion chord that you play with the triad in your right hand is going to use this shape. It's going to use the thumb, middle finger, and your pinky. And it's going to have this shape to it. Right? So in theory, you should be able to plop that down anywhere and play a second inversion chord no matter what. So let's test it out. Let's say we want to play an E flat major. So we're going to just kind of move our hand over. And look at that, checks out. We're using the same fingers, the thumb, middle finger, pinky. And that's E flat major. We got B flat in the bass, E flat in the middle, and the G up top. Let's do something else. Let's say we want to do G major. So keeping that same shape, we want to do a G major second inversion. And look at that, same exact hand shape. D, G, B. Say we want to do a C sharp major second inversion. Same exact shape. This one, the pinky is a little bit more stretched. But C sharp minor would be the exact same hand shape. So I might have slight variations like that, where maybe your pinky is just a little bit more stretched, right? But the hand shape basically is the exact same. Same thing with first inversion. We want to do B flat major first inversion. We got our thumb, index, and pinky. Let's say we want to do an E major first inversion. All right, so we do up to the G sharp, the B, and the E. Same exact fingers, same exact shape. How about a D major? So we go down to the A, or go down to, let's see, F sharp, A and D. Same exact. Look at that. Right? Same exact shapes. So no matter what inversion you play, you're going to be using the same fingers in the right hand. Of course, the left hand is a mirror image of your right hand. So the shapes are going to be mirrored image. So same shape for the root position, still pinky, middle finger, thumb. But then the first inversion, we're going to be using our thumb, middle finger, and the thumb. So pinky, middle finger, thumb. And that was the exact same, if you remember, our first inversions, it was mirrored, right? So we're using different fingers. Then when we want to play a second inversion in the left hand, we do pinky, index, thumb. And second inversion in the right hand was a mirror image. So now we can take this left hand shape, this is our second inversion, and let's do something like B flat. Same exact hand shape. How about something like D flat? We want to do D flat in second inversion. Same exact shape. Let's say we want to do, let's do E minor even. Let's say we want to do E minor in second inversion. So we have the B, E, and G. Still the same finger, still the exact same hand shape. Of course, same thing for the second inversion. Say we want to do F sharp, right? Now we're using a middle finger. Or say we want to do something like, let's see, how about F? F major, same exact thing. Same exact hand shape. Right? So, again, these things can be worked on. They can be developed, of course. And that's kind of the point I'm making, is you want to get to a point where you're not thinking about each individual chord. You want to get to a point where you can kind of just freely move about the piano and play these different inversions without really thinking about them, right? So you can help with your improvisation skills. Right? And you can just kind of improvise, and if you know your chord shapes, you can just move around and play different chords. Play different diatonic chords in whatever key that you're playing in. And it'll sound pretty good. And that's one way that you can improvise, and that's another way you don't really need to remember the chords, right? It's not like you need to think, okay, I want to play G major, but it has to be in second inversion, right? Because I'm already here. But you don't need to think about that. You can just move your hand into that shape that you're looking for. And this is kind of what you want to do. This is, again, the point you want to get to. It's going to take time. Everyone can still work on this and become better at it. But try to really think about it as you're practicing the shape of your hand and less about the individual notes. And then that way it becomes more self-conscious. It becomes much more subconscious. It becomes in your mind, and you don't have to think about everything so much. You just kind of move and you become free, and you free up your brain to learn other things and work on other things in the process, right? So I talked about this in a previous video, but one way you can work on this is take a scale or take a key, so like C major, for example, start on your root position and go through all the inversions. Right? Now with C, we're in C major, so then the 2 chord would be D minor. And do the same thing. Then the 3 chord of C major is E minor, right? And you get the picture, but you can pick one scale a day, start with C major, and just go through all the inversions just like that. And I would just do this one hand at a time, right? And you can even just go 1 octave instead of 2 octaves like I was doing before, and just start with 1 hand at a time. And you're gonna have to think about it. You're gonna have to think about the notes in the beginning if you've never done this before, if you're not used to it. But then after a while, you can have it in your memory and you can go through other keys. So you can take a weird key like E flat major, right? Maybe it's got 3 flats, maybe you're brand new, you're not really used to that, you don't know what the notes are in E flat major, you don't know what the chords are, but that's okay, because once you start doing this exercise, you're going to get better. And then, okay, what's the 2 chord in E flat? Well, it's F minor. What? And then what's the 3 chord? Well, it's going to be G minor, right? And you get it. You get the point I'm trying to make. But you can go through all the keys and you can do this. What I usually do is I pick one scale from the sharp side, right? So either G major through C sharp major. I'll go through that entire scale. I'll do what I just showed you. I'll do 2 octaves, going all the way up and down with both hands. And I'll go through every chord in that scale. Then once I do that, it might take me a minute or so, a couple minutes, I'll pick a scale from the flat side. So either F through, C flat. And I'll do the exact same thing. I'll go through all the chords in that scale and all the inversions for 2 octaves up and down. And what's going to happen is if you do this consistently enough, is you're going to be like, damn, first of all, I really know my scales. I know the chords that are in each scale. I know the notes that make up each scale. You're going to know all the inversions. It's going to help you improvise. It's going to help you play actual songs, because no song just uses straight root position chords, right? They all use some kind of inversion, so it's going to help you play real songs. It's going to help you with your hand coordination, because you have to move up and down, and your hands are doing different things. They're in different positions at different times. So it's going to be working on that. and overall just your music theory as a whole. So this is a great exercise that you can do. And again, while you're doing this, you want to really focus on just your hand shape. Really focus on that hand shape, how it feels to physically play a B flat major in second inversion in both hands. Or first inversion, right? You kind of want to get that picture. And then once you get that feel, again, it's going to help you with so many other things. So with all that said, my name is Josh LaFleur again with Late Start Piano. If you found this helpful, I do have an entire mini course on my website where I show you all 12 scales and all 12 major keys. I show you how to play them. I give you some other tips and tricks as well with some other free bonuses. It's only $9. So if you're interested in that, head over to latestarpiano.com/scales and you can get in that today for only $9. And in addition, I am offering lessons right now via Zoom. To get started with those, send me an email. Link is down below in the description. Happy practicing.